Okay, so we are back with the amazing Alison Skidmore, VP of Customer Success APAC at SAP CX. So welcome, Alison.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure to have you, really. So Alison will talk on why customer adoption should be everyone's KPI. And after a customer goes live with their SaaS solution, the entitlement adoption is one of the most important upstream indicators of the likelihood of an account to renew. In this session by PLG Disrupt, Alison Skidmore, the VP of Customer Success, will explain to us how SaaS organizations can refocus their organization around customers' adoption to create a more customer-centric culture and why this should be everyone's KPI. So, Alison, the floor is yours. Give us your best.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. A bit about myself. My name is Alison Skidmore, and I'm currently based in Singapore. Grew up in the US, spent the last 8 years in Asia Pacific at both small and enterprise customer success businesses in the SaaS industry. So today, looking forward to sharing with you a little bit about my experience overall at different SaaS businesses, and then more specifically, the journey SAP is on right now, where they have actually rolled out customer adoption as one of their key KPIs for all team members, all the way up to the board level. So what are we going to talk about today? 3 main items. We're going to talk about your platform. As you are building a software platform, how are you considering features and different capabilities into the way that you structure that platform so that they can be tracked and reported on? Data and insights. How does your business gather that data and insights so that you can then have your customer success team make actionable decisions off of that information they have on hand? And then finally, the culture. How does having your customer adoption information and setting it as a major KPI change your business's culture? So let's get into it. What is solution adoption to begin with? So you can look at solution adoption in 2 main ways. One is their entitlements. So your customer, let's take Gmail, for example. You are a company, you decide to subscribe to Gmail. Your entitlements are how many email addresses you provision or set up for your company's Gmail account. You might have 10 users, so therefore you have 10 email addresses, and those are your entitlements. Your feature adoption is what features that they're using within Gmail. It might be the chat function, it might be the tasks, the calendars, and it's important to understand how those features are being utilized because it tells us whether your customer is receiving value from the product and if they're engaging with it. And we know when your customer is getting value and engaging that it's more likely for them to renew. So why is all of this important for your product? It's important because if you aren't building your product in a way that allows your customer success team to track and see those data and insights, it will be hard to have those as major indicators. So this was the situation that SAP found themselves in. We realized that we didn't know our customers deeply and intimately. We have over 400,000 customers, and the data was stored in multiple systems, and it was managed by multiple tools. It became very difficult for any individual at SAP to know all the solutions their customers had, how they were using them, and what was valuable and what wasn't. So in order to ensure that the business was able to understand their customers, we actually invested in a tool called Tatango. So Tatango, Gainsight is another key tool in the industry for customer success, data collection, measurement, and actions. And we worked with our product teams to understand what data did we want to track within our products. Not just the entitlement levels, maybe how many orders or users or seats someone purchased, but we looked to our product team to also understand what features are we able to track. And some businesses might do this through putting Google Analytics or other tracking tools within your product. And SAP spent quite a bit of time this year going through many of their products to understand how can we truly tell if a customer is using those products and features. Once we had purchased Tatango to integrate all of the data in one space, and we had worked with our product teams to understand what features and what entitlements we could track, we then pulled this X and O data, the customer experience data, things like Net Promoter Score, support tickets, with their operational data, what features they were using, how many orders they were passing through the system, to then turn those insights into actions. So with a product like Tatango or Gainsight, what you're able to do is actually set up triggers. So perhaps your customer was scheduled to go live July 2019. And 30 days after the date of go live, you see the entitlements are still at 0. This can proactively send a notification to your customer success manager to ask them to look into and see what's going on with this account. You can also use these actionable insights to ensure that when your team picks up the phone to call the customer, that they already have that information on hand. It might be information about recent support tickets. It might be information about how they're overusing the software, and provide an opportunity to discuss an upsell. All of these actionable insights are valuable to ensure that you're having the best customer experience possible. So for SAP, our challenge was not only were we lacking the data insights all in one place, but for over 60% of our customers, we did not have a post-sales customer engagement happening actively. So that resulted in us reevaluating how we were actually segmenting our accounts, and then putting into place some automation marketing activity, especially for those smaller tier customers, which we have a huge volume of. And with those activities in place, we can really start to focus on keeping our customers for life, which after all, I think many software companies and businesses today would love nothing more than to turn your customers into, fans and promoters and keep them for as long as possible. So at SAP, we actually have 11 different businesses. Some of you may be familiar with Concur or Ariba or Fieldglass or SuccessFactors. And what we identified is that our customers were having a very disjointed experience. The onboarding they had on one product was very different to the onboarding on another. And the adoption engagement they got on one product was very different from another. So by putting in place more of a streamlined approach using Tatango, which was very consistent, and we also rolled out some standard formats for our teams, standard account plans, standard relationship assessments, where we went through an assessment with the customer to really understand what the relationship is like today on 9 key dimensions, and where the customer would like to see it in the future. All of this information is passed into Tatango. So we have it all in one place. And this is really becoming the single point of contact for all of our customer data. With that information, we can then ensure that we are driving not just the adoption and the renewal of the software, but we're also driving upsell opportunities, references, and all sorts of other great engagements. So just recapping here, again, the key call outs are having that information on hand from your product. How are you setting up your product for success today so that your business can easily ingest and track those data insights later? Once you have those insights, how are you then transforming that information into actions, whether it's trigger-based notifications, whether it's putting the information in the hands of your customer success team or sales team to really drive that customer relationship and conversation forward so your customers are seeing value from it. So a little bit of overview on the situation. So once SAP had this information and this strategy to move forward, I said I would also talk about the culture today. What did we do to change the culture? They actually set the solution adoption for the KPI of many of the key team members. So many of us know sales often have a sales generation or new business target, and customer success usually has a renewal target. And there's various other teams with many other types of targets. So in 2020, they rolled out that a portion of the sales team member, the pre-sales team member, the customer success manager, the leaders, all the way up to the board level would actually have customer adoption as their KPI. And like many businesses, I have to admit, when we rolled out this KPI, we were moving just as quickly to make sure that we had the data there and available and accurate so that we could run in this direction. But what I think is great is that SAP made the bold decision to really make this decision from the top down. And the data flew through quicker than I could have anticipated, because when it's someone's KPI, everyone is very eager to make sure that it's tracked. And now there's a couple ways to look at that adoption. Entitlement consumption, which I mentioned, right? This is the idea of Gmail, how many email addresses you provision or set up. So common metrics could be spend, users, seats, storage, things like that. And this is often tied to your sales strategy in terms of how do you structure your contracts and entitlements. If you make your entitlements too broad, you could erode future sales opportunities. If you make them too small, you could be going back and doing upsell every single month, which if it's a pay-as-you-go model, could be advantageous. The next layer of complexity and insight is actually the usage. So understanding not just, what they purchased, but what features are they using? Again, with the Gmail example, are they using chat? Are they using the calendar? Are they using task? And for me, this is really where it gets interesting, because knowing that a customer is consuming their entitlements is great, but knowing which features they use is even better, because you can then have a conversation not only about the value they're getting from those features, but the value they could be getting from all the other features. In my experience, I usually see customers are using about 30% of their features. That means they're paying for a whole lot of software that they're not seeing value from today, which is a huge opportunity. We know the more features they adopt, the stickier they are, less likely they are to switch to another competitor, and the more likely they are to be happy with that product and getting the full value out of it. And then finally, also the login metrics. So it's great to see that they're consuming it, but also very valuable to see how often are people logging in what frequency, and really having the insight on that information. So on the right-hand side, you can see a little bit about the metrics we're now able to discuss. We can now talk about customers that have anything from 0% logins or entitlements all the way up to 100%. And what is great about this is it's also shifting how the business is talking about the customer lifecycle. So often we were focused very much on identifying those sales prospects, getting them onboarded, and getting them live. But with entitlements now being such a prominent part of our both internal and customer-facing conversations, we're also seeing that the sales business is more actively involved in the opportunity to expand these accounts. So now that you've heard a little bit about how we're using the information internally, I think it's also important for you to hear about what this means for the customer. And very much transforming the way we do business is also transforming how we interact with our customers. So SAP has recently launched a platform called SAP For Me. And SAP For Me is the portal for our customers. And all these great insights and data that we're gathering on our end have the opportunity for the customer to be able to see them too. So you can see here on the left, a simple customer-centric experience is what we're trying to solve. As I mentioned at the beginning, SAP has 11 businesses. Customers might have one product, 3 products, or all 11. And previously, we have really had our data in silos across different parts of the business. And with this new SAP For Me hub, the customer has the opportunity to maintain their own contacts. So often a product release might come out or a new feature, and you get the phone call from the customer saying, I didn't receive the email. When they have their ability to see and manage their own contact admin portal to ensure that they're getting the marketing information, the product information, the support ticket updates to who they want, when they want, it takes the responsibility and the ownership off of your internal teams, where there can often be communication, confusion, or process misalignment, and gives the customer full transparency to manage and own that end to end. We also have included in here support tickets, and moving to also include entitlement, the consumption data, the renewal, and learning hub as well. So they can do their enablement all out of one place. Having this transparent data for the customer aggregated in one place also helps improve their experience. So we also mentioned about the solution adoption KPIs, the entitlements, the ability to configure tools, and then the ability to actually use those different features. And all three of these can bring on different conversations. And, the configurability is one thing, to actually know that the customer has configured it, but their feature adoption, again, is where I really see the value. And then finally, on the right-hand side, we have the solution thresholds. So again, these allow for very valuable internal conversations for your business. When you get to the renewal part of a contract, it's often too late to save it. If your customer has 0 to 10% usage and you're 30, 60, 90 days out from the renewal, even 6 months, it can be very challenging to help them see the value in that solution that quickly. So by having these segments, what it's actually allowed us to do is put together tailored marketing campaigns where we can pull together our customers who might have 0 to 10% usage and run a targeted marketing campaign to re-engage them. Did they purchase the right solution for them? Is there a different solution which would be more valuable? Was there a stakeholder change and we need to re-onboard? All of this information is allowing us, again, to have those actionable insights to make the right decision to try to improve that end-to-end customer experience. So finally, the culture. So how did the culture shift? So for us, what we saw is that when we started to roll out consumption or adoption as a key KPI for various teams like sales and pre-sales and customer success, everyone started to talk about adoption. And I mean everyone. We were seeing in sales meetings that this topic was coming up. We were seeing in meetings with our professional services teams, they were shifting some of the focus areas, not just on the customer go live, but actually on what's happening after go live. COOs were seeing it appear in their reporting. And these conversations that were never taking place before were starting to happen on a more regular basis. And I will say the change management takes time. There was probably more resistance and concern during the first few months than the acceptance and excitement and intrigue that we see now, but very much a journey. The go live and renewals are not the only focus. So I've worked in quite a few customer success businesses over the years, and it's clear that go lives and renewal rates are some of the most common metrics. So this no longer was the only focus. Not only was the business and team members interested in talking about the entitlement usage, but also the feature adoption as well. And by giving the sales team members access to Tatango, they could also actively log in and see how their customers were adopting the solution. Clean data and trackable metrics. As I mentioned, SAP took a bit of approach from the top down. They very much rolled this out as a KPI as the work stream was moving along, and they kind of converged in the middle. So very quickly, the data became cleaner and easier to use. There were global dashboards, there were great metrics in Tatango, and this really became an entire transformation. The renewal conversations don't just focus on the revenue anymore. So we actually, in a way, could call these competing metrics. If you have a customer who is using 50% of their entitlements and they're coming up for renewal, focusing on the renewal side of the business, you would aim to renew 100% of the revenue. But now that consumption is a metric, if you renew 100% of the revenue, your consumption will only be at 50%. So that now created a bit of a different perspective on which one do we go with, securing more revenue or trying to ensure that the customer has purchased the right entitlements for their usage and they grow with our business. Professional services shifted from just focusing on implementation to actually creating more service offerings and more packages around the adoption. So many of our solutions, the customer may go live in 6 to 9 months, but they may be ramping up additional features and capabilities for 2, 3, 5 years. And this is now shifting the conversation to how the professional services team goes back in year 2 or year 3 to help the customer move that feature adoption from 30% to 50% by unlocking more capabilities in that product. Contract structures are now considered with adoption in mind. So what that means is as the sales team is building their contracts, they're considering if my customer will take 6 months to go live, and over a 3-year period, their business is expected to grow at 20%. Instead of selling a flat 100 users per year over 3 years, they're actually shifting it to ramp up with that expected usage at 20% per year. What that means is that as they unlock more entitlements, the consumption will be following that same trend. And it's building, as I mentioned, a culture where expansion should be part of the long-term strategy. As sales is getting more of the data and customer success is reviewing it more actively on those entitlements, they are both trying to balance staying close to the consumption target with also ensuring that they are getting back in there when the customer is high on consumption and identifying upsell opportunities. So overall, the key messages that I would like to leave you with maybe before we open up with a bit of Q&A or open questions is that, again, having the benefit of rolling out your adoption metrics as a KPI for everyone. Sales, pre-sales, customer success, product support. It will help bring the account teams together towards one common goal. And this common goal has a KPI that's transferable and valuable across these various teams. But it's not just enough to roll out that KPI. It takes time to shift your business culture. And I don't think you'll be able to successfully shift that business culture without having the right data to back it up. So before you embark on the journey, start at the very beginning with the product. Think about how you're building your product to ensure that not just entitlement metrics are accessible and easy to pass through to a tool like Tatango or Gainsight or other area to review that data, but make sure that you can also track the features and how those features can get consumed by your customers in your own unique way. And with those insights, you will be able to empower your customer success team, your sales team, to then come up with tailored programs that will not just ensure your customers are using their software, but taking into account the experience they want to be having and the value that they can get from it, to truly build a customer experience that is focused on ensuring your customers are getting value out of that product. So I think that's a bit of information on the SAP journey and a bit from my experience as well. So I will pause there and see if there are any questions or open up the floor.
Okay. Hello again, Alison.
Hello.
That's a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for that. And I love the graphics as well. I told you that before. Okay, so we have 3 questions from the audience. The first is what are the key metrics to track for your customer health? Who does the scorecard look like? How does the scorecard look like?
Great question.
Yes.
Okay. So, from my personal experience, and I will say SAP has a lot of products, right? We have 11 businesses, and in the business I'm in, we have about 8 products. And I will say some of the products have been easier to track than others. So, for instance, we have a marketing cloud solution. So a fairly straightforward metric to track in the marketing solution is how many users you're storing, and then how many users you're sending out email campaigns to.
Okay.
Or we have a CRM, and our CRM is quite easy. How many sales reps or services reps have you provisioned? How many opportunities have they generated? How many support tickets have they answered? So those are some of the metrics we've looked at, but we have other solutions like our commerce solution. And the commerce solution is on a website, you go to make a purchase, you add to cart, and you check out. The challenge with our KPIs there is we haven't set them yet, but if we did, we would set it on the number of orders purchased or the amount of revenue coming through the shopping cart. This could be a very challenging KPI. And if we take COVID as an example, because if a business is not getting online orders or revenue, we can't say it's directly tied to the performance of the team or the software product. Okay. So again, I think that's where that coordination with your product team is very important to make sure that you are finding the right features or entitlements. So that's a little bit, and and happy to provide more context if it's helpful on how we track the entitlements. And then for the scorecard perspective, our customer success team has actually built what we call an adoption consultant into our team. And I've actually seen this in 3 of the customer success companies I've worked at. So the adoption consultant works alongside the customer success manager, and they actually build out those scorecards. They often have a consulting background from, Ernst & Young or Accenture, and they leverage the data, and then they tie it to the customer's business objectives, whether it's increased sales or marketing revenue or whatever it might be. And then they actually take the customer's business objectives and the product capabilities and the KPIs, and they will map them together. And then once we have a standard template, we can kind of pick and choose. So that's been quite valuable. I will say the first few times we do it, we have actually led the customers through that engagement. And I think that once we provide them with the template where they can select from, they often start to have a bit more confidence and ideas around what else they might want to add.
It looks very structured and meaningful in the way you presented it. Definitely. And now that you mentioned COVID, I have the second question. So could customer adoption be considered as a stable and reliable KPI in an unpredictable and competitive environment or era, for example, recession or COVID?
It's such a good question. Okay, and so SAP rolled out this metric in 2020, January 2020.
Okay.
So I will say, product dependent, industry dependent. So there's no doubt that in my overall customer portfolio, we have some customers and industries that are doing particularly well and some that aren't. And we have some products like our commerce product, although we're not tracking the consumption per se, is actually performing very well because many businesses are moving online, where maybe, Concur that does travel and expenses, maybe there's not so many travel and expenses. So I think, again, very much you could see impacts based on the industry, the product, the focus. And this is where I would be interested to really go beyond those entitlements and push for the features, because I think the entitlements can be one KPI, but to really go a layer deeper, the features would then allow you to engage on the accounts that maybe haven't been so affected. And you can help drive that further feature usage.
Yes, definitely. Totally agree. Okay, so the third question is, what are the factors that determine an effective customer adoption timeframe?
Customer adoption timeframe.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Dependent. So
Again.
again, tell me more about your business. No, so at one of the SaaS companies I worked at, the software tool was a bit like a widget. It took 2 lines of code. It could be up and running in 5 hours. So depending on, again, your product capabilities, and I would very much, again, encourage that close alignment with the product team. How are you ensuring that you get your customer live as quickly and as easily as possible? Can you set up situations where that code can get dropped into a container? And does that make it easier? Are there API connectors available? You know, these types of things. But with Tatango, what we have been able to do, because SAP has such a diverse range of products that could be anywhere from a day to 2 years, the time to value is quite, you know, broad. We can actually then set standard KPIs, what we expect. This product on average takes 3 months. So we know that if it goes past 3 months, we're starting to get into the red. So I would very much encourage that you work with your services team, your partner, your product to really understand what should the benchmark be, what is it today? And this is also a great KPI to work on. How do you improve time to go live? Because the sooner the customer gets live, A, the higher likelihood of retaining them, and B, the higher their time to value.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more, really. Okay, so thank you so much for this conversation, for the presentation, both insightful, the knowledge, you know, the level of knowledge is very high here. So again, thank you for joining us today. I wish you all the best, and I hope we see each other again in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye, Alison. Okay, so this was Alison. She was really amazing. Please stay with us because in the next minutes we will introduce the next session. So stay tuned.